Next, we have Professor Krishna Sen, who is talking about an interesting topic, very close to and applicable to all of us, Indian women and Australian careers. Just to give a little introduction about Professor Sen, she grew up in Kolkata and came to Australia in 1978 to do her PhD in political science at Monash University. She went into a succession of teaching and research jobs at Murdoch University, Curtin, and finally UWA, where she nearly had a decade as the Dean of the Faculty of Arts. She remained Professor Emeritus and a Senior Research Fellow in the School of Social Sciences at UWA. Krishna has led many leadership roles in the Australian academia and has published extensively in her specialist area of Indonesian studies. She is a fellow of the Australian Academy of Humanities and was appointed to the reference committee of the New Colombo Plan by Foreign Minister Julie Bishop. I invite Professor Krishna Sen to share her insights for Indian women who are aspiring or who are already flourishing in an Australian career. Thank you, Professor Sen.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Gayatri, for that lovely introduction. I've got the light in my eyes, so can I just walk forward? That's much better. Can you hear me? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. In my 30 years of being an academic in Australia, I have spoken in many, many forums and have spoken on International Women's Day, but I don't think I have had the honor of addressing a group of fellow Indians like this. So thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to speak to you today. I didn't realize that Anna, who has just disappeared, was in fact a colleague at UWA, and in many ways Anna's focus was what people often talk about in career development, which is as if the individual can do and achieve everything that they want to. And in some ways, within limits, yes, individual motivation can provide a lot of the answers, but there are structural limits. You cannot talk to a woman who has had a significant career without hearing about the glass ceiling. Just ask Hillary Clinton. It's not a visible ceiling, but when you hit it, it really hurts. And some people who break through, some women who break through that glass ceiling, for instance, our former Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, when you break through, somebody or the other bashes you down. So there are limits beyond which many female careers still cannot progress. Nonetheless, in my own sector, which is the higher education, women have made incredible strides. When I became Dean of the Arts Faculty at UWA in 2009, the Equity and Diversity Office wrote to me and said, as a joke, "Do you realize, Krishna, it's taken UWA nearly 100 years to appoint a colored dean?" But the next Vice Chancellor of UWA is going to be from South Asia. Dr. Chakma, Professor Chakma, who is coming to UWA from Canada, is from South Asia. So in some ways, there have been strides in colors, and there have certainly been huge strides in the appointment of women. Sorry, I've got onto a second problem without finishing the women one. So let me finish the women's story. When I first started in Murdoch University as a lecturer, this was in 1988, there wasn't a single female vice chancellor in the entire country. Through the 1990s, female vice chancellors started being appointed, and in 2018, the statistics show that by 2018, which was the year when I finished my second term as the Dean of Arts at UWA, by 2018, 25% of the Australian Vice Chancellors were women, and something like 35% of my fellow deans were women. So the glass ceiling has started to shift. The glass ceiling has started to shift. I didn't have a chance to say there is another glass ceiling breaker right amongst our midst. I think, Lisa Harvey, you are the first liberal opposition leader in WA as a woman. So, and I believe that I have not met yet, but the new Consul General from India is also a woman. So that also is another, sort of glass ceiling-ish thing that's being broken. So glass ceilings are being broken around us all the time. There is also another kind of ceiling that people who are visibly of a different color also face. The previous, what was his title? The Race Discrimination Commissioner, Tim Soutphommasane, talked about the bamboo ceiling. Now, the bamboo ceiling is in some ways visible. It's visible, it's audible in your name. It's audible when we are called Nirmala and Mamata and Krishna. It's an audible difference. It is visible difference in my skin color, in many of your skin color. So the bamboo ceiling is in some ways visible. It is also very, very complex. In 2018, the Human Rights Commission put out a report which was called, I think it was called a blueprint for diverse and culturally diverse leadership. I'm being shown 5 minutes. I think I've just got enough to go through 5 minutes. What was I going on about? Oh, yes. So the report looked at the top 2 layers of ASX 200 companies, the top 2 layers of federal governance, and the top 2 layers of universities, of the 40 universities. So the VCs, DVCs, the federal ministers, ASX CEOs, that kind of stuff. They looked at something like 2,000 people very, very closely and came to the conclusion that 95% of the leadership roles in Australia are held by Anglo-Europeans. Now, you might think that's reasonable, but Anglo-Europeans are actually about 75% of the population, even though they hold 95% of the leadership positions in business, governance, and in universities. This is much harder to talk about. Diversity is very, very difficult to talk about because there are so many trajectories of difference that makes things diverse, that makes us diverse, right? And the diversity, so if you think about yourself as an Indian woman, you fall somewhere on the diversity scale, which is problematic, and you fall somewhere on the equity scale, which is also problematic. So as an Indian woman, you are up against cultural barriers as well as gender barriers. Does that mean that you can't have a fantastic career, or you can't fall into a fantastic career as I did in Australia? Of course not. You can achieve enormously important things. Now, those who invited me to talk today said I should say something about what people should do. Now, once you start thinking about what individuals should do, you often get into a situation where you're kind of putting too much responsibility on the individual to get over their issues. I think the institutions need to do certain things, and if you are in a leadership position at an institution, then you should be looking at the ways in which the institution can become really, really culture blind. That is to say, where your name and the color of your skin and your gender does not make any difference to whether you get appointed, whether you get appointed to a particular job, and so forth. Now, there are lots of people who are writing about these issues, and I probably don't have time to get into most of them, but I do want to say one thing. If you are in Australia, if you are a woman, if you're a colored woman in Australia, if you're an Indian woman in Australia, there is one thing that you need in bucket loads. And Indian women are often not trained to have that thing in bucket loads. It's called confidence. I have a particularly Indian story about confidence. When I was leaving the country as the eldest daughter of an upper middle class family whose father didn't let her go in a bus to her college, my father talked to, gave up all his good scientific credentials and talked to my Masterji, my Sanskrit Masterji, who also read palms. Coming to an end, 1 minute left to the story. Do you want me to stop or do you want me to finish the story? Finish the story, okay. So Masterji's response was, he looked at my palm and Masterji said, "Saab, aap bilkul dikkat na kijiye. Iske haath mein to Shiv ka damaru likha hua hai." So, sorry, Lisa. He said, "Don't worry about it. Her, sir, she's got Lord Shiva's damaru in her hand." And I said to him, "Masterji, ye sab aap kya bol rahe ho? I'm an atheist. You can't talk to me about Shiva's damaru." And Masterji said, "Look, child, Shiva doesn't care whether you're an atheist or not. His damaru is in your hand. Go do what you want to do." So confidence in bucket loads. And the other thing is, if you're a mother, give your daughter a strong name. I love my name. Krishna. Krishna means a black woman. It's another name for Draupadi. Don't call them Namrata. Don't call them Sweta. We don't want to be called white and gentle and tender. Call them Durga. And if you're an Indian woman, channel your inner Kali, the ultimate black girl in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Krishna Sen. That was wonderful. I think lots of ladies have had an insight into what they should be thinking, how they should be behaving, or how they should change their perspective a bit. I would just like to invite Mrs. Anu Madan on stage to please give a token of appreciation to Professor Krishna Sen. Mrs. Anu Madan. A big round of applause for Professor Krishna Sen, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.